I mean, there's been 2 consecutive in-person meetings now that have been canceled. And I think it's really time that we really should get together. But that's my opinion, and I'll go with whatever everybody else thinks.
I'm with you, Evangeline. Before you even suggested it, I was going to suggest it at today's meeting. So you beat me to the punch. Yes, we have to figure out a way to get together. Yeah, whether we do it, you know, when everybody's available, a few people available, we really need to get together. So,
agreed.
Okay. Okay. So leadership will work on figuring that out. Sarah, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. As you said, you're slated for who is slated for July.
Ryan, we can't hear you.
Oh my.
I would have to look at the list. Off the top of my head, I want to say it might have been Artists of Lexington.
That's my guess is what it was. And now that Camille isn't part of Artists, then we wouldn't be likely going there. So my overall feeling is, since we canceled on Rachel, who's up in Lowell, we should give her the opportunity to do it next month. And I think then it would be safe to assume that she'll take that opportunity. If not, we can certainly reach out to you, Sarah, and then we could slide that in and make that work one way or another. I haven't gotten an update from Deb recently, and she hasn't been to too many meetings on how the assisted living down in Weston is doing in terms of that fire. And so I don't even know if they're even ready for having people like us to come in there. So we may have the need for a home for the next remainder of the year, Sarah. So we might take you up on your generosity and being able to have some meetings at your location. So with that being said, you know, one of the things with this meant to be in person is really to discuss a lot of the nuts and bolts of the group. And so, Brian, to give you some background, since you are new to the group, one of the issues that we were dealing with was having a hybrid meeting where some people would show up in person, some people would show up virtually, but it was not very cohesive. The same people wouldn't be, it was very scattershot of who showed up in person and who showed up on Zoom. And it really didn't grow the group and form those connections. And one of the things that we are self-admittedly struggling with is making sure that people are connected, setting up events and having people going to those events. So our hope was, when we were meeting in person, we would talk about the nuts and the bolts of the NAIPC and growing the group and pushing it forward together. And then the other 2 meetings of the quarter would be more focused on education, like I said, spotlights of current members, and of course having guest members come in and have presentations. So that was kind of the way that we were moving forward with things and hoping to see how that worked out, which obviously the last 2 in-persons haven't happened. So what we were going to talk about today, and leadership kind of got together, was talking about the membership process. And then obviously we need to talk about the events process. We do have an event coming up, and we want to continue having more events coming up. And in terms of those events, one of the concerns that I have that I'll bring up later on. But in terms of membership, right now we have a membership committee in which their job is to onboard members. And so when prospective members come to us, they are going to be the ones that are talking with them and working with them. Ideally, in a perfect world, I think we want each individual to be able to have a pretty good idea and conversation with prospective members that they're inviting on what this group is about. And then the membership committee has to do less work, right? Going off of the idea of many hands make light work. So instead of in the past having an email sent out that says, hey, Brian's a prospective member and needs to know about the group, well, that conversation ideally would happen with whoever's inviting Brian, giving them an overview of the group. Brian, just using you as an example, I know you're a member now. And then any further up questions that Brian had could be through an email or through a conversation after they had join the group, come as a guest. I wanted to get the feedback on how we can continue going with that process. And right now we have Camille I believe is part of membership, and Rachel is part of membership. And I'm pulling up that, but kind of pulling up our list of things. But how has that been going? And do we have anybody from membership that's here? Rachel, you're not membership. You're part of the events. We have two Rachels. You're part of the events. So we don't have Camille nor Rachel here. Has I guess it's going to be hard to talk about membership when the membership subcommittee is not here. But it seems like, is that a process that makes sense, or how would anybody else like to see that process done?
Ryan, I do have a question.
Sure.
So I think it's a great idea that if we meet someone and if we think they're going to be a good fit for membership, to talk to them about the NAIPC. Now, is this the time too that we look over those questions that we have to see if they're a good fit, or is that part of the membership committee to move it forward by asking those questions and taking a better look at this prospective member?
So right now we haven't been sending those questions out to individuals. It's generally been a general conversation with a person, typically, and I did write up a FAQ that can be sent out to prospective members that answers the majority of the questions that I feel we've had conversations over the last year and a half that most people ask. And then the idea was, if those two documents were sent out to individuals, any other questions that they had before they wanted to be a guest of the group could be addressed either before that guest appearance or after that guest appearance. But as far as those original questions from the very beginning, I haven't been sending those out, and I haven't been necessarily asking them.
Well, I was excited to see that at last month's meeting, we missed you very much. We did have some new participation, so it made me feel good knowing that we do have, many of us out there trying to, have people come in and try the meetings that do bring value. And I think it's great to have this conversation to see where is that follow-up, right? If we have people that are making the recommendations and bringing the guests, like what is the best way to follow up to make sure there's follow through on the folks that are taking the time to try it out?
Yeah, so I mean, that follow-up should be happening from the membership committee, the subcommittee, the individuals that are there. So at the end of the day, what should be happening is that an individual member invites somebody, gives them an overview, sends out the documentation on how to join the group and the frequently asked questions, and then that person, if they have any other further questions, they can get in touch with membership committee, or they can then come to the group as a guest up to 2 times. And then from there, if they have further questions, that can be handled by the subcommittee, and the subcommittee would be the ones following up with that individual until there's an answer on whether they want to join or whether they don't think that's the right fit for them. We can certainly introduce those questions if, Evangeline, you feel that those would be, and if everybody feels that those would be worthwhile to introduce and to ask those questions to vet prospective members as well. But that is not right now part of that process.
Okay.
So I mean, by all means, if what I kind of want to do and want to look at is where are the bottlenecks for that process, and where's the friction for individuals on joining, and how do we make it as easy as possible and as streamlined as possible. And I think, what ends up happening is that in the past, what happens is most of those people kind of went to me, and they would be sent to me with an email, and then it would be on me to have those conversations with individuals, which is where those repetitive questions came up. And that's why I wrote that kind of FAQ to be able to send over to people so that they can have a better idea what the group is about. And then based off of that can be kind of the individual one-off questions that are unique to each individual.
Okay. Ryan, I do have one question. So
Sure.
where do we get any feedback? So if we refer a prospective member to the membership committee, can we get any feedback from them saying, yes, we've contacted this person and we'll be working with them as far as getting them involved in the membership? Because case in point, I invited someone to the last meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't there at the last meeting. I had no idea whether she was ever contacted by a membership committee person. And she was invited to the meeting. I didn't know whether she participated or not. And then I just got an email from her actually today because I wanted to follow up on with her saying, did you go to the meeting last month? She said, no, I didn't. I had something else that came up. I'd love to go to this month's meeting. And it was today, so I couldn't afford her any more information, but I will get back to her after this meeting. But there was no communication as far as membership saying, yes, I contacted this person and, we told her about the meeting, we invited her to the meeting, things like that. So, for the person who has this prospective member, has talked to this member and has gave over the name to the committee, there's no now communication saying whether they've moved forward with this prospective member. You know what I'm saying?
It makes complete sense, and I'm writing down that there was
Okay.
lack of communication and follow-up from those individuals to do that. And another area where there's a bottleneck is with me and these invites, because I'm the only one that has access to the calendar that can give the invites, and I don't know where to fix that and be able to share that calendar with people. I don't know how to share. So when we had Zoom, I tried to invite people to be able to be co-administrators and administrators on the NAIPC meetings so that they could run the meeting, they could be a co-host basically. And since they weren't part of my organization of Minute Women with an @mwhomecare.com email address, they had a different email address, Zoom would not allow that to happen. So that's where there's been also an additional bottleneck in knowing that people have been invited, is because when somebody says, hey, invite this person, and I put them in and I send out the email to them, as which you all get, then at least that person knows they've been invited. They can click yes or no, and then they can come to the meeting and have it auto-populate on their calendar. And the reason I bring that up is that at least that's some follow-up that says, hey, I invited this person. I know that they got that invite because I sent it out to everybody again. And that's certainly a bottleneck that I've been trying to figure out how to fix that, because I should be, or whoever the president is next year shouldn't be the only one that has access to that information, because that's where certainly a mistake can be made. And again, maybe the vice chair has access to it so they can run the meeting as a backup, and they can invite people as well. And then that, at least there's some checks and balances and there's a backup to that.
Yeah, I just actually deleted out all of the meetings because I have 3 invites from you in my Outlook calendar with different meeting links. So I just deleted the ones that I have, and I will ask you just to resend a fresh one so I have one. Because I don't know, I feel like every meeting I'm having to reach out to you to be like, am I trying to log into the right place? And so that would be helpful if you could resend, Ryan.
So what I have, yeah. So I don't know what the issue is with that, to be honest with you, Sarah. Obviously there's something on my end that's so I deleted from my calendar. I deleted all of the Zoom invites. So in theory, there should be only one invite that people see. And so people are going to be getting multiple invites. So as I invite, so when Brian wasn't added to the invite, I added him in and I sent it out, and that may have populated to other people. And I don't know if people are accepting multiple invites at one time. I don't know.
I don't know if it changes the Google Meet link. I'm new to Google Meet, but the meeting I was trying to log into was Google Meet, but then the link you sent me when I emailed you on the side trying to get in was a different link for Google.
Yeah,
but we can figure it out on the side.
I understand it. It's one of those things where technology is supposed to make it easier, and apparently is making it more difficult.
I do have a quick question though, kind of getting back to membership, to
Sure.
follow through. How are we making sure that the membership folks are getting the information on who attended? Like, are we highlighting that on the minute notes so people know, like membership knows these are the 5 people that were new? Because like, I think about last month, I don't believe Camille or the other Rachel were on. So how do they get the information that they need to reach out to these folks to follow through?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they have to be on. You know, the first thing is that if you're going to be joining the subcommittee, one of you has to show up to this meeting, and it needs to be coordinated between the 2 subcommittee people. So that's my opinion on how that should work. If there needs to be one representative of each subcommittee at these things, and ideally we would have 3 or 4 people in the membership group. With that being said, is that every single month I do send Evangeline an updated list of highlighting of who showed up. And obviously I wasn't there last month, and Evangeline wasn't there last month. So again, this is part of these processes, which is why it's good to have these meetings of saying, all right, we needed to have a backup for that, and who is that backup going to be? So
You did.
Yeah, it should have probably been me. We've omitted to
it was me.
record
It was
the
yeah, I'm sorry.
the meeting the last time, and just thinking about all that we're discussing, and yeah, so I think, next time what I will do is actually record. I think because I sent out the Zoom link, so I'll press record next time and send that over. But yeah, there's so much I could probably just say in regards to a lot of the gray areas that needs to be strengthened so far, as far as, the note taken. And I know that I've reached out to a couple of folks, had meetings with a couple of those prospective members that want to join or want to learn additional information that was sent to me. But when they're sent to me, I find, I guess it's the follow through. What does that process looks like? Who, with the person that's sending the individual over for a conversation, or just to say, where is that person currently in the process? And I think that needs to, there's some work there, right? And it's not just on, I guess, membership. As I'm thinking of all the pieces that I could probably do while engaged, and maybe sending a note back. And so I'll start to develop some sort of protocol, at least to go back to the, to the individual and say, hey, I was able to meet with such and such. Yeah. So yeah.
well, I mean, that's what this conversation's about. It's about finding out where the pitfalls are and fixing those. And so at the end of the day, it looks like and I just made you an editor. We have a Google list, and this gets sent out to individuals, but I've made leadership, which would be myself, Marianne, Evangeline, and Georgia, editors of that. And I believe Sarah and Rachel, you both have access to view that that document. And so we can be able to edit that and add who the guest presentations are, who's involved in spotlight presentations, and then who were the guests or visitors for that month. And so that's all in there. And so it's just a matter of somebody updating it. And I'm perfectly fine with updating it if I'm at the meeting. It's just more or less that the next steps usually are Evangeline takes that information and sends it out in an email with the meeting notes of who showed up, who the guests were, who the spotlight presentations are. So there's an update to that. And so basically that chain of command would be myself, then Georgia, then Evangeline, then Mary. And the chain of command is only made that way because that's how I have it listed here, with the chairs of chair, vice chair, secretary, and then treasurer. And then the subcommittees are membership, programming, events, and then sponsorships. So if myself and Evangeline aren't, if Evangeline and I aren't here, that would be Georgia and then Marianne, and that kind of gives you the 1, 2, 3, 4 of how that needs to go.
I just want to say, I I took attendance and I cleaned my office and I can't find, I took notes and I took attendance and I had a nice slip and I've been cleaning my office. So I'm going to look for it, but I did take attendance and I did take notes. I'm so sorry. And I'm trying to be neat, and I'm crazy trying to be neat because I'm looking around thinking, where the hell is that piece of paper? So I did take it. Excuse me.
Hey, Ryan, question for you.
Yes, sir.
Are you the one sending out the calendar invitations for every meeting going forward?
Yes.
So I think there is a way, I know there was Zoom, where even if you can't make it, if you set it up to be recorded, that's number one. You can always record them even if you can't make it. Number two, I think that you can log into your Google Meet profile and view past meetings and see who actually checked in. So I don't know if I don't think it's a situation where if you're not there, somebody else has to write down the names. I think even if you can't be there because you set up the meetings, you can go back and see everybody who was on. I don't know if that helps, but I think that could be a nice way of streamlining the process, as opposed to, saying, hey, I'm not here, you're not here. Can you make sure this person writes down the names? Might be
No,
something to look
absolutely.
into.
I think I need to look at that and see what the capabilities of Google Meet are in terms of automatic recording. I'm writing it down, and then past attendance.
Yeah, because to your point, I know with Zoom, at least the way we have it set up at Bernstein, is that somebody has to click record when it starts. But I'm not sure if there's a way to pre-record it. You could, because if so, that could really kind of streamline a lot of these issues.
Absolutely, and I can look into being able to. Right now, as far, I mean, I recorded this one and it was manually done, but it would be good. It would be good to be able to invite somebody to that meeting and leadership, 4 people. So one of the 4 of us have access to being able to go in there and edit anything that needs to be edited, record anything that needs to be recorded, and run the meeting in case an emergency happens and I can't make it. And so I got to look into that and see what we can do. And then that way we have those redundancies.
I mean, overall, I believed it was a great meeting. I think that a part of it is that we ran out of time because we had 2 presented individuals, and it was so good to see Brandon on there too as well. And I think that we kind of saved the notes that Evangeline gave, and so Marianne, we kind of saved it for the last, because it was, of course, it was about corporate offices and all the events that are taking place at corporate office. But I felt that it was a nice dialogue to kind of learn. I learned a lot about, members here, that even Brandon, I mean, some of the things that he presented on was very eye-opening, along with some of the folks that were there. So I take full responsibility for that. I mean, the meeting was a success. I think I was so engaged, even as an individual. I felt like I was like a guest at the meeting, that I probably overlooked some of these logistics.
Well, listen, it takes a lot to, all this stuff is going to be, I mean, unless there's somebody who's run these meetings before, and if they are, they're better than I am, by all means. I'm not the best, but right at this point in time, the only thing we can do is trial and error. And this is why we have to have these kind of administrative meetings where they're open to everybody in the group to throw the issues at the wall and say, hey, listen, how do we fix some of these things so that we can improve this? The only way you can improve is by looking at what's not working and seeing how we can make it better. And there's a lot of things that we can work at making better. And the more that we make better, the more people that I think are going to be willing to join in a leadership capacity, because they feel like there's not as much on their shoulders, because it's easier to do. We're not all doing this because we're making fistfuls of money working with the NAIPC. We're doing this because we want to give back. And the easier ways we can make it streamlined, it's going to make it more enticing for people to renew their membership as well as join the group. So a little bit of upfront work will make it easier in the long run. And I finally gotten through on national with that. I said, guys, ladies, gentlemen, we need a process on how to run these groups, and it needs to be closer to a corporate structure. It can be guardrails if somebody's better at doing that. If Boston is better at a hybrid model, let's say, for example, than California is, that's okay. But here's the guardrails on how we think this organization needs to be structured so that we can grow it. So that's what I'm doing at the board of directors now is working on that process. So I appreciate the input. You're muted, Marianne.
I have a question. We're talking about getting people into the group. The question I have is, once somebody gets into the group, do we have like a mentorship program where somebody, because when I came in, I was a member, then I just sort of had to fudge my way around and find things. But do we have a mentorship program where there are people who are really good and know the whole system, can spend some time with Brian and say, these are the different things you want to know and where you want to go? That's a question I have.
Right now, there isn't one. Well, go ahead, Rachel.
I also feel like when I started, I even after I started, it was like, oh, well, and part of it was probably on me for not investigating on my own some of the things that the national chapter has to offer. But a mentor at that point may have gotten me more involved more quickly.
You're muted as well, Evangeline.
I'm usually not muted, so so there is a mentorship program through the NAIPC. So if you get onto your members clicks, you'll see that there's once a month. There's for new members, you can get on. And in fact, Tara said that even if you've been a member for a year or so, it's still good to get on to see what's new through the NAIPC and how to finagle the whole members clicks, because I'll tell you, I keep getting on and I'm still not getting all the information that I should be getting through members clicks. Like even the list of the people from the Mass chapter, there used to be a whole listing of everyone who's a member and what their background is. I can't even get to those profiles anymore. So anyways, so there is a mentorship program out there through the NAIPC, but through the Mass chapter, we do not have anybody in our Mass chapter that is a mentor.
Okay, thank you.
So, sorry, I was trying to log into member clicks. So that was definitely something, Marianne, that I was going to bring up myself as well. I think, I guess I'm only telling what my vision is, and we can do it any different way. But I would imagine that the membership committee has 4 people. 2 or 3 of those people are for new members. Ideally, we are getting so many new members and you need multiple people to handle that. And then 1 to 2 members are for retaining current members. That handoff of saying, hey, listen, Brian, I'm going to keep using you since you're brand new. I helped get Brian to join the group and we were successful in him joining. Now it passes off to member retention in being able to introduce Brian to 2 or 3 individuals within the group through just a simple email introduction to do a one-to-one, or having a 3-way one-to-one on Zoom or Google Meet with 2 or 3 different people that are going to be ideally you would assume would be important to Brian, and having a good network and building that out. And then, Marianne in an email mentioned there were a few people that were planning on leaving the group because they weren't happy with some things that are going on. And I think that there should be some kind of member retention where 90 days out or so, when somebody's renewal is coming up, there can be a conversation with that individual to see what value they're getting from the group and if they're happy with that group. And maybe 90 days into the membership, there's a conversation on whether things are going well or what they're looking for. And I think one of the things that I've struggled with this group and been overall disappointed with is that I don't feel like we're providing enough value to members to get them to stick around. Now, when Marianne mentioned somebody's leaving the group because there's too much conflict, and by conflict, Brian, not that there's infighting, but there's too many, I assume, realtors in the group or too many home care companies in the group. It isn't that people don't like each other, it's just that there's competitors in the group and they're not happy with that. Well, you kind of got involved in this group knowing that this isn't BNI. This isn't you get to have one seat. If 15 assisted livings or 15 home care companies want to join this group, they're welcome to join in. It's a nonprofit, and we can't say no to people because there's a business conflict there. And then my next question would be, well, how much did you put into this group? I'm guessing that the people that are complaining and saying that they're going to leave, I probably can guess who they are, and I haven't seen them in 6 months. And so there's a little bit of the more you put in, the more you get out of this. But at the same time, to your point, Evangeline, to your point, Rachel, we can improve our odds with that if we have a simple process. When somebody joins the group like Brian did, what happens when they happen in the first 30 days of joining the group. And it would make sense to me to introduce them to like-minded individuals that they might feel would be good referrals for them. But as also, if there's a competitor, I have found that knowing your competitors is a good thing too, and having a relationship with those individuals is a good thing too. You know, Sarah works for Bridges, and down the road is Artis. Well, maybe somebody's not, even though you're competitors, maybe somebody's not as qualified for Artis as they are for Bridges, or maybe Bridges is too full, but you're friendly with the new people down at Artis and you send them down the road because that's doing what's right for the customer at the end of the day. And I think there's some benefit in doing that. So I think it would be worthwhile to brainstorm for a few minutes of what that process looks like once somebody joins the group. And since we do have Brian here, who is brand new to the group, what would you like to see from us moving forward, and what ideally would you have liked to have gotten from us so that we can better provide value to a new member?
Yeah. So, you know, so just to kind of give some background on my process. So I was referred by a member who sent an email to Ryan or Evangeline. And then I received a response saying, okay, you know, or from you, Ryan, saying you need to speak with Evangeline, and Georgia as well. And then there was sort of this, okay, who needs to be on the call, who doesn't need to be on the call. It was fine. And then I ended up speaking to both of them, which was great. And then I had my meeting, and luckily I was really interested, so I kind of just pursued it myself. But in situations where somebody is on the fence, I feel like there probably could be more follow-up. Although, Georgia, I do think that you've been, you know, sort of by my side sort of since the start in terms of making sure I have my questions answered. But then I did have to follow up because I didn't know when this meeting was going to be, or if it was going to be in person or not, just because I wasn't on that list. So that's obviously just like a back end logistics type thing. But I think that initial call with Evangeline and Georgia was actually super helpful. I don't know if that I needed anything beyond that. To be honest with you, they answered all my questions, and they sort of gave me a really good guideline for what I should be able to expect. Again, I don't know. People might be more needy and might need more information than that, and that might be where the FAQ comes in, or like a buddy system. But I felt fully prepared after that. So if anyone's giving you if this is a conversation of why are we not getting more retention, then we can go to the drawing board, and that might just be assigning someone. Say, okay, we're trying to onboard this new person. Let's link them up and say, okay, we'll have a bi-weekly call to see how things are going, questions you have, membership, you know, benefits. But, you know, I can certainly think about that and give you my perspective a little bit more thought out and ideas, but that's sort of, you know, where I'm coming from on this.
Thank you, Brian. May I add to this? Because I think this has come up in a few of my conversations, and kind of how I visualize people benefiting from the group is truly these event opportunities, right? We now have our first event scheduled for May for the Caregiver Conference. And I put together the list of topics that all the members who participated sent their topics, and brought this to the senior center. And they were so excited about Erin's topic, right? They were like, wow, living your best life with low vision. I think that having this list and being at the point where we're getting events, I think it would be appealing to people to have opportunities to be in front of seniors, to bring their topics to the greater community, because that's what we're trying to be, is bring out these resources. Of course, there's great programs happening out there, right? at a national level, but how can we make it appealing for the chapter members to have these opportunities? And one of the things that came up is, with these topics, if we're planning ahead, people don't have to present in person. We can Zoom in a guest. Georgia can take this list to local council on aging or places that are looking for education and resources and provide this list and plan ahead of time. If I can travel to Connecticut and be there in person, great. If not, Georgia's going there with coffee and donuts, setting up the Zoom and Zooming me in live time to present whatever the dementia topic is that's of interest, or to listen to Rachel's program about PT and travel, whatever that looks like. But I think having more opportunities to get our members in front of seniors, to get our members out there presenting, I feel like having this list of events and trying to get more events scheduled, I think that's going to be appealing to folks. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I first started this group, I thought it was a networking group, and it's not. It shouldn't be looked at as a way to network. It's a way for us to work together to help the community figure out all the resources and be that group that can lead people in the right direction to care for their loved ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think that especially with this, education list can be growing, or if you're working with a certain group, most people plan a quarter ahead of time. So if we're looking at something later this summer, I could reach out to Georgia and say, hey, I have a group that's interested in your mental health topic. What are some dates I can pitch to them so I can Zoom you in? And I've had success with this. At Bridges, we offer virtual education all the time. Alicia Seaver is, a dementia care specialist with almost 30 years of experience. I go to senior centers and I Zoom her in live. I'm talking with the seniors and networking as the program's about to get started. They listen to her intently, and at the end of the program, she leaves it open for Q&A. So I am able to ask the participants questions directly to Alicia. We can do the same with any member that is providing the education, and we can support each other. Evangeline could bring this out to her local senior center. Georgia, any one of us. And it doesn't have to be a senior center. It could be a community center or anyone who's offering education as a resource. But I think if we're helping people get out there and we're doing the, helping each other with the footwork of setting up these events and planning them ahead of time, people will feel the value, because it's not just about attending something, they're providing something. I don't know, just my take on it. But you also know I'm very passionate about events.
Yeah,
But
I
to
think
your point, this is what our mission is, to get out there and to educate. So, that's who we are. And to back on that is to, I look at this group for myself and for my businesses. I'm meeting everyone that I actually can pull in for my business to refer when I'm working with a client and I see that they need a certain other type of service. I know now that I can pull this person in and feel comfortable knowing who they are, referring that person. It just happened to me 2 weeks ago with Matt, with the home modification. Somebody called me saying, do you know anyone that provides chairlifts? And I said, oh my goodness, I had the person for you. I gave all the information. He was there the next day. They're so happy with him. So again, this is what it's all about. You're networking organically, but our mission is to go out there to educate with your events. So.
The other thing that came up in conversation, sorry, I hate to feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation, but I wonder if, and I know that the group is not focused on being a networking group, but what if one of our events is network related to try to draw in new members? Like, I wonder if in the future there's opportunity for that, because people do love networking, people love opportunities, and sometimes capture, like if it's in person, we might have a better opportunity of attracting those newer members because you'll have a group of us who are invested in it, right? And I don't know, I just wonder if it's a possible opportunity. And it, again, maybe it's one time a year networking group, or I don't know, just throwing it out there.
Well, we've talked about that, Sarah, and certainly, in our leadership meetings about having sort of, not really recruiting, but just the members and people who are interested in the group and how we can educate people about the group to join. So that's a great idea, and that's something that certainly, I talk about a social. Maybe, for some reason we can't seem. We've had these events that that delayed our meetings. The other thing that maybe we have a social. We did it once, didn't we do that, Brian, early on? Ryan, we went to breakfast, and that was really nice. We just sat around and had breakfast and we chatted, and maybe we do something more formal. The other thing that always seems to bother me is our attendance. Is like, we have how many members now, Brian? I don't even know. And it's like, where is everybody? And that's one thing, is like, we need to get more people to come into, to come to the meetings. And I don't know how we do that. And maybe the in-person is going to really show that people don't want to do it on Zoom. They want to do it in person, and maybe we go to 6 times a year. I don't know. But the other thing is networking. We have to network more with each other. We really do. I don't think we do that enough. I know.
Just to piggyback on that, Marianne, I think that's a great point, especially when you consider where we are with this close to Boston. I mean, the amount of emerging professional groups that there are out there, like with ACG, and you mentioned BNI and XBX. This is not to be marketed as a networking group, but it's a really, really good way to get people interested, especially those like emerging professionals that have, different backgrounds and sort of like, new fresh perspectives on certain things that we don't already have like locked in by members of the group. Like Marianne, she's got her piece down. There might be another type of service that we don't have any representation from that could be, useful to just sort of try to attract new people, because I haven't heard of NAIPC. The only way that I had heard about it is by Erin DiCarlo. So being in the city, it's not something you just hear the same groups over and over and over again. And again, I'll come back to the fact that it's not a networking group, but it might be helpful just to sort of spread the word out to more people to try and get them involved, because everyone wants to meet new people. It's a small city. It's good to know the right folks for, again, bringing in people for chairs or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think that's a really, really good way if we're looking to build the group. And then you'll sort of weed through the people that you can tell are not there for the right reasons, and that's the job of that initial call and figuring out what the goal of the membership is, but at least it's a nice way to introduce more people to the program.
So I agree with all the above, and Sarah brought up something that I was going to bring up one way or another was, and Marianne, piggybacking you, was the lack of attendance. I think one of the downsides that we have all experienced, we are all guilty of, except for Brian because he's too new, is that, but he'll eventually be guilty of it as well, is that the travel to go somewhere may not be worth, in the eyes of individuals, the value of what goes on, the networking group, what going on. We tried to do after our mixers. Nobody showed up to it. And what ends up happening is that the responsibility of myself and other leadership members, Evangeline and at the time Marianne, and George is out of state, so it didn't fall on her. But we were basically handcuffed to go to these events, stay at these events for the 2 hours that we were running it. And one person ended up showing up, and it was just the 3 of us looking at each other going, well, like, if nobody's showing up to these events, we've got bigger and better things to do on our own. Now, maybe doing something after work wasn't as successful. Maybe if we do a networking luncheon where people get together at a press cafe or somewhere, but inevitably the issue that we have is we have a very spread out group. Rachel is down in the South Shore. Marianne is up in the North Shore. Brian, I assume your location is not in everybody's backyard as well. And maybe you're working from home. So just because your location, quote unquote, is in Boston doesn't mean that's necessarily where you are. And that is something that we have struggled with in saying, hey, listen, how do you get people together when somebody inevitably is going to have to be driving an hour round trip to come to an hour-long meeting? And there's no easy way to do that. And our hope was running these quarterly meetings would cause people to get together. Sarah, to your point, is maybe we get a list together of all the Council on Agings in our areas with an email address, and we can send out a blast that says, hey, we're able to do virtual events. Maybe you start that way. My concern with doing these events, and the May event is a little bit different because it's a fair. But if we were having an individual event at, let's say, Beverly Council on Aging, how many NAIPC members are showing up to Beverly at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to do an event, outside of the person that's speaking?
Well, that's why I think I wanted to put out there the Zoom option, right? Mary Ann could have a relationship at the Beverly Senior Center where she goes in. When I Zoom in Alicia, I walk into the senior center by myself with my laptop, my box of donuts, and my box of Joe. And I set up the laptop to their big screen to Zoom her in. So, and that would be something that Mary Ann set up with her Council on Aging and connected with whatever group member they chose as a speaker. You know, that's exactly what happened with Andover. Is I brought them the list of topics that we compiled and said, hey, guess what? I have more to offer than just dementia topics, because that's all I can provide. And when they saw Erin's topic, they were very intrigued. And then I reached out to Erin and to you to say, hey, can we participate with this? And again, that was a couple months ago. So I think that if we're planning ahead of time, you know, Georgia can go to her local community center. They might be interested in dementia education in September. I am happy to look at my, September calendar and say, hey, I can be there in person, or hey, let's make it a Zoom meeting. And
yeah.
If people aren't comfortable, I'm happy to show them how I've had success. I mean, we're all pretty familiar with Zoom. It's taking an HDMI cable and plugging it in to a larger screen. But I think that it's not, it doesn't have to be difficult. It's not going to take a lot of hands. And I feel like, we are already getting some momentum and we should keep it going. And I feel like this is kind of like a grassroots but easy way of keeping it going. That's just me.
Absolutely. I think it's an alternative to what we're grappling with is what the new procedures are going to be now that people are working remotely and travel is now an inconvenience instead of mandatory as it was before COVID. And so that and I don't I understand we're not quote unquote a networking group, but if no networking goes, so for example, Maureen emailed me the other day and said, do you know, I don't know who else said it, maybe it was you, Evangeline, do you know a ramps person? And I was like, Matt Abel, talk to Matt Abel. He's a member of the group. She's like, oh, great. And this isn't to Maureen. It's just the point is, how doesn't Maureen know that Matt Abel is a member of the group? He has been for the last 2 years, and he does ramps. That's what he does. And I'm not saying it's on the onus of to me, I took that as we haven't provided the value to people and the opportunities to network with one another to be able to do that. And how do we fix that? This isn't anything against Maureen. It was more of like, our members don't even know our other members. And that's a problem, that we don't know each other. And how do we fix that problem of not knowing one another? And so, we have 30 people in a group, and it's great that we have 8 of us on here or 7 of us on here, but it's still, 20% of the group when we have 30 members, still disappointing. And it's still not going. And so it's going to end up being that the top 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people that consistently come to these meetings are going to be the one doing 90% of the legwork to get this going, instead of it being more around. And I think your solution to that, Sarah, is a fair one, which is, hey, listen, let's just do this on Zoom if we're going to continue to struggle to have people be coming in person. I mean, maybe if we want to do a networking group, if we want to get people together, I'd be open to having a luncheon. Maybe having a lunch at a local restaurant to get people together will do that. And at least, you know, if nobody shows up, I'll still be able to eat lunch, rather than sit there at 5 o'clock and twiddle my thumbs for 2 hours. But, again, this is where, I don't blame Rachel, but why would Rachel come all the way from the South Shore up to Arlington to have lunch? You know what I mean? Like, or vice versa. It becomes difficult when you have more than a 5-mile jaunt to go somewhere, and that's where I think has been a really big logjam for us in getting people together. And I don't know, to finish my long-winded, I don't know if that's we're not providing enough value to do it, or it doesn't matter how much value we provide. People aren't going to get into their car and drive around, 45 minutes to an hour and a half round trip just to go to an hour networking event.
I'm glad that Brian brought it up, his experience, because I'm like thinking from that entry point. And you're right, it's not a perfect model, but I think that there's, like, I know Matt, and I'm not in Mass, but I think it's got to be our responsibility. I don't think that we would, it's like paying for, I don't know, I just don't want to put payment, but we pay a membership fee, but it's our responsibility to know that we are I'm not going to know what everyone wants, but we have a due diligence to be able to say what is not what I can get, but what can I give. And I think that even here in some of the presentation, to be able to know about what people do, it gives us an opportunity to say, well, if that comes up, like I've contacted Matt, I have a home, Matt, I need you to give me a quote. I need you to take a look at these photos. And he was so happy to do it, right? And it's just because of me knowing him and me being engaged and me being a part of it. It's just like, the financial side, there's things coming up that I may need someone in the group. Where do I go first? I'm going here, right? Just because I take the time to kind of know people, what their offerings are and what they're able to kind of provide, right? But, how I'm like going into this is that I would say, let's throw it out there. Let's plan an event. I think lunch is an event, not something that someone's going to show up. And let's make it kind of like a lunch and learn. We don't really have to talk about our individual business, but let's strategize together in the company of professionals that's going to, to learn more. I think that some people I need to be in person for me to have a vibe with you. Maybe that's it, right? Maybe the Zoom or Google is too formal for them, right? And so I say, let's just throw it out there and have a meeting. And I know that people are busy, but then, you know what I mean? I don't know what that time looks like. I'm able to switch things around on my calendar to drive almost an hour and a half, 2 hours, but I'm fine because I love what I do. And I feel like I don't want to be standing alone. I want to partner with professionals like you who help me to do my job well for my clients, right? That's my investment, making sure that I know you, but I can't, I know we're not perfect, but I can't handhold every professional that says you're not what I'm looking for, or I'm not getting what I'm looking for, but help us understand. And I think I'm not jabbing anyone. I'm wanting to get more insights on what are you thinking, because I think a lot when I came in is from national. It's like I was hooked on that level before I became a partner. I think Tara is the one who moved me back here, right? So I had a vested interest at the national level, and they have a lot to offer that I don't believe that our members are really tapping into some of our interaction and events on that level.
I agree with you, Georgia. I think it's out there, and I think you're getting whatever you put into this organization, and it's up to us to
Rachel,
do one-on-ones with other members to really get to know them. I think this is where it's important when we do the quarterly in-person meeting, because this is another way of us networking either prior to or after the formal meeting. This is the time that we're actually going to relax and say, oh, I see you on Zoom. Tell me more about you, things like that. That's how we're going to get to know one another. I don't necessarily think we need events to network, but I think by trying to keep this quarterly meeting going in person, that this is going to be a good opportunity for us to get to know one another on a more personal level. And then from there, that's when you say, you know what, I want to take this conversation, even further. Let's do a one-to-one next week. You feel more comfortable when you're in person doing that than on a Zoom meeting. A Zoom meeting, you're in your lane, right? And you have to give everybody time and things like that. And so I think a good way to start is trying to get this in-person meeting for April, and then put in that there's going to be a networking period either before or after.
I do like that idea. Two things. I want to throw this out here. It would be helpful to have a chapter member directory. I don't know if that's something that can be made, but our names, what we do, maybe the resource we have to offer, that might be helpful just to keep a ongoing list of that to share with people who are joining, because then everyone will know, Matt. But anyway, besides that, the other thing I think this came up last time is that's essentially like other Rotary groups or like meetings that I've gone to. They have had, networking opportunities where either the first half, like you were saying, Evangeline, is that networking, right? It's that you can rely, like you could lean on a member like myself at Bridges or anyone else that has a community like ours to provide the lunch, right? Then people, you're not worried about who's going to pay. It takes out all of that kind of confusion. Someone provides the luncheon, the space to network and mingle with one another. You have the opportunity to share about why this group is so great. And then after that event is over, networking lunch, we go into those people leave and we dive into the meeting. And I know some Rotary groups, they have the meeting beforehand and then people start showing up for the event and then they go into the event. So I think that it's definitely a great way. I would be bummed to miss the networking opportunity for April. I know that Camille is happy to help host, and I'm happy to help set her up. I don't know if you want to look at like a summer get together, because I know you mentioned July. You were looking for spots for July, right, Ryan?
Looking for spots for what?
The in-person. I think you mentioned that Camille was listed as Artists of Lexington for the next in-person.
Yeah. So, I mean, so yeah, we will need somebody, we will need somebody for, I guess, not April, but for, what would that be? June? Is that what it is? So it'd be April, May, June. So it would be, June that we would need someplace.
I'm gonna look here.
So to answer your question, Sarah, we can add to this, but we download the list and we email the list out to everybody on a monthly basis with the meeting notes for them to be able to do, to look at. Like, so in a couple hours, Evangeline will send out the meeting notes, and an attachment will be a PDF of everybody that's in the group, their phone numbers, what they do, their business, and their email address.
I know. So are people looking at that? I mean, if that's considered the member directory, I know that you send the attendance. I didn't realize that it listed everything that they do too.
There's an attachment. And honestly, Sarah, if you go to member clicks, you should be able to go into the Mass chapter and get a list of everyone who's in the chapter. Again, all their information, and plus their profiles, which, as I mentioned, I had a hard time actually doing that when I tried to go into member clicks a couple of days ago. So I'm not sure what's up with the website with NAIPC, but it's a little hard to navigate. I have to admit, it's not that easy. But at one time, all that information was on members clicks under Mass chapter.
Yeah, I was actually looking on member clicks this morning, because one of the questions I was going to ask is what materials you thought would be helpful to print for the conference in May. And the only brochure, the only thing that I thought would be a good one was the, membership brochure, but there wasn't much on there to talk about how people can benefit from people can benefit as a member. But it would be great to have a little something that says how people can lean on NAIPC members for resources, because most of their stuff is about, getting members.
Right, marketing the membership part of it, right? And you're correct on that. I don't think anything that's out there that we can print as far as for caregivers and clients to give out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm game, whatever you guys think are helpful. It's just, I feel like we've made, sorry, I'm trying to get you guys back here. We've made progress, I think, with getting this first event underway in front of a group of seniors and caregivers. And it would just be great to keep getting more of us out there. So I, want to think of a simplified way for people to feel encouraged to, get out there. Because even if you're not the one presenting it, even though they chose Erin DiCarlo's presentation, we can be there to support and get to talk that I'm Sarah on behalf of Bridges, and I get to partner with Erin. We're both a part of this fabulous group. And it doesn't take 3 or 4 or 5 members. It's just the 2 of us. I don't know anyone else who's planning on attending the conference. So do you know what I mean? We're representing there. I don't know.
No, absolutely. You're now I'm thinking the only thing that I could think of that would be the easiest to do these things is to put it on my website, because I know for a fact that or somebody's website. I'm not saying it has to be mine, but the point being is that we looked at building our own website. Nobody was updating it. It became, you need to have a place that it can be housed, that there is a you can go and look at the bios of the individual chapter members. Right now there are 19 chapter members, apparently via member clicks, that have bios on our group. I don't think that's accurate either. I think that there's more members. I don't think we have 19. I think we're probably closer in the low 20s of the amount of members we have. But, to your point, Marianne, to your point, Sarah, we have 3 assisted living folks, right? And before Camille moved over, we had 3 individuals. We have 3 different real estate professionals. The people complaining about that there's too much competition, not one real estate person shows up.
Right.
Not one. And so there's no competition. It's just that they in their head think there's too much competition. And so what I was going to talk about, this is bleeding into the leadership community, but so let me stop the recording.